Long ago, before the telephone and modern toilets became the thing, there lived a mighty demon king named Varvatos. Feared and revered for his tremendous power and abilities, Varvatos breezed through his era without any issues. Nobody even dared to stand up to his might. They wouldn't want to risk getting beheaded in a second. Even his friends had to bow down to respect the power he possessed. Little did they know that Varvatos hated his powers. He was sick and tired of the praises when all he wanted was for someone to stand up and defeat him. To Varvatos, he longs to experience the taste of defeat again. Unfortunately for him, though, that person never came. Varvatos eventually got tired of his life, so he kills himself and reincarnates his soul into another era far off into the future. 3 millennia later, Varvatos is reborn as Artie or Ard Meteor, into the family of commoner Jack Meteor and his wife. On his 10th birthday, Artie's parents try to make it a memorable one for their son. Moments after the party, Artie gets back to his normal life. He seems to have retained the strength and magic abilities of his previous life. He complains a little about how easy the era's magic is as he has no trouble learning all the spells in the grimoires. Artie had only one problem though. As a 10-year-old in an era that knows no war, he has a lot of trouble making friends. He tries making friends with his neighbor once again, but later ends up scaring them away. Artie doesn't give up as he rushes to town and begs a group of 3 girls to be his friend. The girls get even more scared of him and run away. This frustrates Artie so much that he takes it out on the poor trees in the forest near his house. Once he's done venting out his anger, he gets back to his house, meets their family friend, Baron Olhide, and complains about his inability to make friends. Olhide tells him to try being kind and respectful in his next encounter and see how well he'll make friends. Artie thanks him greatly and runs back to the city to try it out. On getting there, he tries to be polite but still gives off an awkward vibe to it. Nobody likes an awkward dude, so they all reject him. Artie gets back to the forest there and tries to calm himself down. While he thinks of what to do concerning his situation, he suddenly hears a young girl screaming nearby. He activates his levitation spell and flies to find the white-haired girl fighting an ancient wolf. In the meantime, Olhide settles down for some tea with Jack and his wife. He discusses his concerns about his daughter's close-mindedness toward making new friends and wishes Artie could change it. Artie, on the other hand, witnesses the young girl take down the wolf in front of him. When she's done, he gets closer, retaining his composure, and introduces himself. He fumbles around a little bit and eventually gets the message across. To his surprise, he gets his first response. The lady, who turns out to be Olhide's daughter, Irina, refuses to be his friend, seeing as he doesn't know a thing about her. She rushes back to her father and asks him to take her away from the countryside. After finding out Irina is Olhide's daughter, he makes it his goal to become friends with her. He keeps on stalking and surprising her with gifts. Irina initially thinks he's just a creep, but her bias changes one fateful night. On this night, Artie had followed Irina to the forest to watch her fight the monsters. He shows up moments after she's done and still manages to creep her out. Artie returns home that night and thinks of new strategies to try with Irina. Just as he's about to sleep, he hears screams outside. On getting outside, he finds out their village is being attacked by goblins. Olhide complains about his daughter being missing. Artie quickly flies himself to Irina's location. He finds the goblins getting ready to pounce on the little girl and saves her. The goblins, after receiving thunderbolts, get back up for round 2. However, Artie turns them to dust with his demon eyes. After he's done, he inches closer to Irina and gets to know her more. So it turns out Irina has been a socially awkward child who hates people for the entirety of her short life. She still refuses to believe Artie wants to be her friend. Artie, however, tells her he totally understands her and still wishes to be her friend nonetheless. Irina thinks long and hard and finally accepts Artie as her friend. Several years later, Artie and Irina grow up to become teenagers. One morning, Artie wakes up to see Irina sleeping close to him. He throws a tantrum after seeing Irina so close to him. Irina, however, asks him to enroll in the Academy of Magic together and begin the next session with them. After the summer break, Artie and Irina enroll for the next academic session. On the day of their entrance exam, both of them see the headmaster of the academy, Headmaster Gold, for a brief discussion. He praises Artie and Irina for being such extraordinary mages and also mentions the praiseworthy things they've done in their younger days. Artie, after hearing all the things the headmaster said about him, maintains his composure and gets ready for the entrance test. Artie and Irina wait a few hours after the test for their results to be released. After it's released, Irina finds out that she passed with a 9.4-point score and is now accepted to the academy. Artie, on the other hand, struggles to find his name on the list of acceptees. He looks at the last name on the last and finds out that he got accepted after scoring 0 in the test. Artie gets really confused and wonders what could be happening. Gold shows up and tells him he got a 0 because his answers were not accepted in their era. If it were an older era, however, he would have gotten a perfect 10. His vast knowledge of the ancient arts is what impressed him well enough to enroll him in the academy. This could mean Artie is another prodigy in disguise. The headmaster doesn't keep Artie's brilliance a secret either, as he makes sure the entire first-year students know how brilliant he is. After their acceptance, Arena and Artie check out their new school. On getting to their class, they find the students all waiting to meet them both. Everyone has a good time getting to know the stars in their class when the bully and powerful nobleman Elrado Spencer shows up to bully a poor succubus girl named Ginny. Arena tries getting Elrado off the poor lady. However, Elrado refuses to stop bullying Ginny and even insults Arena in the process. Artie steps into the situation and orders Elrado to stop his childish act. Still, Elrado remains disrespectful to Artie and his origins. Before the situation goes out of control, Lady Olivia, an old friend of Varvatos who turns out to be her homeroom teacher in this era, shows up to settle the commotion. Artie gets very nervous and nearly gives up his secret identity as the reborn demon lord Varvatos. Thankfully, he keeps his mouth shut when he's supposed to and listens to what she has to say. Olivia tells the boys to settle their banter in a duel. The whole class erupts in excitement as they all move outside to watch the all-powerful Elrado and Artie fight. Artie promises to hold back on the bully, but Elrado summons thousands of fireballs and forces Artie to use a forbidden spell. The forbidden spell, a lost skill, allows the caster to use several elements at once. Olivia notices this as abnormal for a first-year student and watches Artie bring down the proud Elrado with his jig of flair. The fight ends after a few minutes with Artie as the victor. Irina quickly rushes over to congratulate her friend. Ginny also thanks Artie for saving her from the bully. Olivia claps a little and challenges Artie on the type of spell he used back in the fight. She lets him know that although she still can't figure out why he used such a spell, she would stop at nothing to figure out who he is. Up next, Olivia splits up the class into a team of 3 for a field assignment. Everyone wishes to join Artie's party. However, Artie selects Ginny and Arena to be on his team. Then Olivia leads her class into a tunnel network to search for and kill a level B+ monster, Black Wolf. Artie and his team find the Black Wolf in the first few minutes and burn it to a crisp. Ginny gets very sad for not being able to help out. Artie offers to be her teacher and Ginny shyly accepts his offer. He tries teaching her a few spells, but Ginny fumbles at it. She falls into more despair, but Artie tells her not to give up. He creates another spell called Script Magic right in front of them and gains more respect as he explains the complex processes he used in creating such. After a thorough explanation, Ginny tries it and gets it done. The girls get so happy that they both carry Artie and walk right into a trap door. The trap activates and sends them falling several feet down into a cave filled with minotaurs. Artie protects the girls and takes down the minotaurs that attack them. When he's done, he asks Ginny to muster up some courage and try taking down a minotaur. Ginny gets cold feet initially, but soon gathers up the courage to take down the minotaur. Luckily for her, she gets it down this time and gets to save her friends. After the test, Irina and her team members pass the test. Eldorado tries bullying Ginny again, but this time he gets punched in the stomach. After dispersing the entire class, Olivia calls Artie back to have a chat with him. A few days after the test, Gold calls Artie for a brief discussion about the battle event, which is to happen in a few days. Since the Queen would be attending the event, the headmaster wants Artie to fight in the tournament and garner enough attention from her, so they can get some more funding for their school from the Queen. Artie, upon hearing his plan, humbly declines the headmaster's offer and refuses to be used by his school. He says something that catches Olivia's attention, who is present there with them. She walks closer to him and begins to suspect Artie could be Varvatos' incarnation. Artie asks the headmaster to give him more time to think about it and then leaves shortly. He runs into Ginny in the hallway, who asks him out. Artie thinks thoroughly about his answer and decides to reject her offer. However, when he sees her huge chest, his mouth moves on its own and accepts her proposal. Ginny gives him a happy smile and lets him know she looks forward to their date together. Irina cuts them short and asks to go on the same date with them. To her surprise, Ginny allows her to go with them. She reveals that she doesn't wish to hold Artie herself and would be happy to share him with other girls. Artie just stands there and watches the girls share him amongst themselves. A few hours later, the girls dress up in nice attires to impress Artie. The trio meet up outside the school and immediately transport themselves to a theater. After complimenting each other's outfits, they get inside to watch the play. Artie watches in disgust as the live-action actors make poor efforts to recreate his past life. At one point in the play, Ginny gets scared and pulls her chest too close to Artie's chest. Irina sees this and also brings herself closer. Artie secretly choked from the excessive amounts of chest energy the ladies were offering him for free. He maintains his composure and keeps watching the play. Along the line, he finds a big flaw in the play and opens his eyes wide in surprise. Thankfully, he survives the entire play and gets back outside in one piece. The girls begin to fight over where to take their beloved date. Artie settles the fight by letting Ginny lead the 3 of them to a restaurant of her choice. As they walk through the city, Artie and the 3 ladies overhear a group of masked men plotting an attack on the Queen during the battle event. Artie stops moving and makes sure to listen to every detail the cloaked men have to say. When they're done, they move further into the alleyway and Artie follows them with his ladies. The intruders open a manhole in the ground and get down to the sewers under the city. Artie and the ladies follow them and find them getting ready to activate their magic circle. Just then, one of the guys finds Artie and the ladies. They all surround the 3 kids and threaten to end them if they don't surrender to them. When Artie refuses to cave to their threats, they decide to burn him. Artie, however, smiles and counters their attack. The entire rebel group is shocked at his prowess. Nonetheless, they refuse to back down. Artie amps up his spell and takes out all except one of them for interrogation. The last one remaining transforms himself into a winged goblin, blasts a hole in the ceiling and flies out. Artie activates his levitation spell and follows the goblin outside the sewers. The goblin holds a child hostage and causes panic in the town. However, Artie calms the people down and urges them to trust him. When he's calmed them down, he releases the hostage and destroys the goblin before he escapes. The people are amazed by his strength and begin praising him for saving them. The following day, Artie and the two ladies are summoned by the queen to receive the queen's thanks. On getting to the palace, the queen recognizes Irina, her old friend, and asks Artie to mention what his reward is. At first, she suggests they get married, but Artie refuses her proposal. The queen then tries to promote Artie to the Pentagon level, but Artie still refuses and asks that she increase the Academy's funding so he can avoid fighting in the oncoming event. The queen accepts his request and grants himself and Irina the Pentagon level rank as knights. Artie is stupefied at Her Majesty's gracefulness, but he accepts what he gets. Elsewhere, the masked men continue cooking up plans to take down the queen at the event. Only this time, they recognize Artie's strength and promise to take him down with the queen. The following day, Artie gets asked out by a female student during lunch break. He quickly rejects her and asks her to be his friend instead. The girl doesn't take this right as she tries seducing him to go to bed with her and traps him. Thankfully, Irina arrives just in time to chase her away and save her sweetheart from a trap. Artie walks over to thank her for helping him out, but Irina just walks away angrily. Elsewhere, Professor Jessica meets with Olivia and the headmaster only to find out the star in their school, Artie, isn't willing to participate in the battle coming up soon. Gold also explains further that he plans to promote Artie to be an instructor in the school. However, he fears that the nobles may oppose this decision. He has to get Artie to fight in the tournament if he wants his plan to come to fruition. Jessica promises to do something about it, and the headmaster thanks her. By nightfall, Ginny visits Artie in his room wearing a very seductive dress. She tries to push Artie into making out with her, but Artie refuses to give in to her advances. Ginny refuses to give up as she gets closer to Artie. Irina, on the other hand, feels very sorry for the way she treated Artie earlier that day. After convincing herself that she's a bad person, she decides to go and apologize personally. She gets up, changes into her seductive nightie, and walks towards Artie's room. To her surprise, she finds Ginny on top of him and about to kiss him. On seeing this, she freezes on the spot and begins trashing Artie's room. Ginny tells her to compose herself and reminds her that she's not the only one seeking what's inside Artie's pants. Irina keeps on throwing a tantrum and Ginny gigbles a little bit at Irina's jealousy. Irina gets even more aggressive and challenges Ginny to a duel to settle their banter. The winner gets to keep Artie and the loser strolls around the street with nothing on. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a win-win for me. When he's heard enough, Artie brings them to order and demands they apologize to each other. The girls reduce their noise and proceed to apologize. At that moment, Jessica steps inside and tells the kids about the headmaster's plan to appoint Artie as an instructor. However, since Artie refuses to participate in the tournament, the girls have to somehow prove to people that Artie can handle it. They must enter the tournament as Artie's students and fight their way to the top so the noble can appreciate Artie's leadership skills and accept his new role as instructor. The ladies refuse to be used for such a purpose, but Jessica manipulates them into signing up for the fight. The very next day, the battle event begins with Olhide and Artie's parents working as the commentators for the event. As expected, they embarrass themselves a little bit before getting to their jobs. While the first few matches go on, Irina stands in the dressing room a little nervous about her first fight. When it's her time in the arena, she steps out with pride to face her first opponent. When the timer starts, Irina spots Artie praying for them in the crowd and gets a sudden burst of power. She channels this power into her magic and knocks out her opponent in just one spell. Artie is so disappointed at this but still refuses to show it. Irina walks back to the changing room and finds Ginny going for her fight. Irina tells Ginny to fight well so they can meet each other in the finals. Over the next few matches, Ginny and Irina knock out every one of their opponents. Eventually, the duo makes it to face each other in the finals. With the two ladies now facing each other, everyone, including the parents and teachers, is eager to see how it'll all turn out. However, just before they begin their fight, a few masked men stand up from the crowd and transform into winged goblins. The arena is thrown into a state of pandemonium as the commoners run for dear life. Professor Jessica quickly asks Artie and Olivia to chase after the goblins and leave the girls in her possession. Everyone agrees to this, and they all split up. Olhide finds his girls having trouble fighting a glass goblin. He quickly steps in and destroys the goblin. Then he lets his guard down and fails to realize the person behind him. Professor Jessica, who's been working with the enemy, blows her cover and takes out Olhide. She knocks Ginny down and captures Irina. To escape the arena, she reveals her demon wings and flies Irina to another location. Olhide wakes up on a bed at the nurse's office surrounded by Artie, his parents, and a few other officials. When asked about his daughter's capture, Olhide tells them the frenzied King of Dragons, who was previously undercover as Jessica Elzard, knocked him out and abducted his daughter. On hearing this, Gold expresses his shock and asks Olhide how Elzard is still alive. Artie cuts in and promises to rescue Irina as quickly as possible. Later on, he prepares himself to find Elzard's hideout. Before leaving, Jack advises Olhide to tell Artie the truth about Irina's true nature. However, Olhide fears that Artie may refuse to save his daughter if he does. He recalls how happy his daughter used to be whenever Artie was around and wouldn't want to destroy that for the world. Irina wakes up in Elzard's hideout after having a terrible feeling about Artie disappearing on her. She finds herself bound in magical cuffs in a transparent magic cave with Elzard and her dragons right in front of her. Irina asks Elzard why she wishes to use her true nature so badly. Elzard summons a demon's apparition and tells Irina she plans on using her true monstrous nature to unlock the seal Varvatos placed on the demons several millennia ago. Irina tells her not to worry much about her plans and that Artie would be there to save her in due time. However, Elzard remains unfazed as she still sees Artie as a normal human being. After getting into his full armor, Artie heads out to find Irina. Before he leaves, Ginny catches up to him and begs him to come back with her dear friend Irina. Artie smiles and promises to bring Irina back before dinner time before flying away to Elzard's hideout. Back at the hideout, one of the demons was about to take over Irina's body when suddenly, Artie arrived in time and destroyed it. This pisses Elzard off as she orders her demons to take Artie out. Artie, however, summons a 9-cast spell and takes down all of Elzard's dragons. Elzard appreciates his display of power and powers herself up to face her strong opponent. After saving Irina from her chains, Artie finds out about Irina's true nature from Elzard. Although Irina expects Artie to react strongly to this revelation, he still keeps his resolve to save Irina from Elzard. This pisses Elzard even more and she attacks them. Artie, however, keeps his composure and knocks her down with his spear. After taking the first hit, Elzard decides to transform into a full dragon. She unleashes her full magic powers and throws a damage-rich attack at Artie. Artie blocks the attack totally and summons the spirit of his sword, Lydia. He fuses with Lydia for a short time and regains the form he had in his former life. Overwhelmed by the immense power in front of her, Elzard begins to fear for her life. Artie displays tremendous fighting prowess and keeps up with Elzard's fighting style. However, Elzard gets too fast for him and knocks him out midair. Just as he's about to give up, Irina screams out his name and brings him back to life. Artie releases his limiters and activates Phase 2 of his powers. This time, Artie Meteor analyzes his environment and controls it to help him take down the dragon right in front of him. Elzard gets even more furious and directs a last resort attack at her enemy. Artie unleashes the Ultimatum Zero, a powerful magic spell in his arsenal, and destroys Elzard with it. Once the battle's over, he restores Lydia to his soul and gets back to his normal form. Irina thanks him for his help and recognizes his immense powers. As they go back home, she promises to get even stronger so she can stand beside Artie as an equal. Sophie Marheaven, another one of Varvatos' friends and sister Lydia, Artie's sword, finally ends what she calls her 3-year training in a cave. What she didn't know was that time flows differently in that cave, and while she thinks only 3 years have passed, it turns out she was there for a hopping 3,000 years. She gets out of the cave and returns to the village. On getting there, she gets the shock of her life when she sees so much development in the streets. She rushes to an alleyway, gets a grip on herself, and finds a masked man waiting for her who breaks it to her that she's been in the cave for 3,000 years. The dude walks away from her and Sophie follows him. The person reveals himself as one of the servants of the demon Lord Varvatos and Lydia, her sister. Sophie then asks him about Varvatos and the man tells her that he's already dead. As Sophie falls into despair, the man inches closer to her and tells her that he's reincarnated himself to be a commoner named Artie Meteor. Sophie gets very annoyed at this and plans her next move. In the meantime, Gold is seen in a meeting with Ginny, Irina, and Artie, their star students. He asks them to help star in an upcoming play the school would be hosting in the school festival, so they can raise more funds for the school. While Artie thinks about his response, Gold takes out a letter from the rebel group, threatening the school to stop the school festival. Artie and the girls promise to help the headmaster eliminate the threat. The headmaster also tells them to go to Olivia if they need help with the enemies. Artie and his girls get back to class and wait for their teacher. Before she comes, Sophie breaks into the class searching for Artie. Artie tries his best to hide his presence, but Sophie catches wind of his scent and calls him the reincarnated demon lord. Varvatos in front of everyone. Artie tries to act like a fool, but Sophie keeps muttering and shouting out several weird things. Irina gets fed up with all the shouting and shushes Sophie once and for all. Sophie is surprised and sees a side of her sister, Lydia, in Irina. She asks for her identity and Irina tells her she's a dear friend to Artie. Lady Olivia, who seems to have been enjoying the fight all along, suggests a duel between Sophie and Artie so they can settle things once and for all. Artie knows this is Olivia's way of confirming if he's the Magic King or not. So when the fight begins, he decides to hold back and lose to Sylphie. Unfortunately for him, Sylphie had a very good talent for annoying people, even Varvatos. She successfully riles him and forces him to unleash way more power than he needs. Artie crushes Sylphie and wins the fight fair and square. However, Sylphie refuses to cave in to defeat as she summons her OG sword and releases its magical powers, which poison the entire arena. When things begin to get out of hand, Lady Olivia calls Sylphie back to order. Irina also steps in and scolds Sylphie for being too careless with her powers. Sylphie suddenly gets remorseful and apologizes for her wrongdoing. After the duel, everyone gets back to class. Artie presents a tale of the Demon Lord to the entire class and figures out that they're missing one student. Just then, they overhear Sylphie shouting outside the classroom and step out to check out what's up. On getting outside, they find out that the noble students were actually making fun of Sylphie. Irina steps up and puts the noblemen in their place. Everyone gets back to the classroom and votes for the actors for the play their class is to star in. Artie gets voted in to take the title of the Demon Lord. They then discuss a few more things their class could do for the festival. Ginny comes up with a sultry-made outfit dress-up idea and showcases it to the class. At first, the class was crinning about the idea. However, after a little more explanation, they all opt in for the maid costume idea. Sylphie gets very sensitive about stripping herself down to show her audience and throws a tantrum about it. Unknown to them, the servant Sylphie met earlier on was watching their classroom. He laughs maniacally as he waits for Sylphie's reaction when he finds out the real truth about what Varvatos did to his sister. After class, Artie and his classmates all visit the stalls in the town to get themselves some tasty treats. Artie buys Irina some ice shavings, which she enjoys really well. Sylphie, on the other hand, is busy bullying a poor stall owner. His offense? He's as ugly as a demon. Artie, Irina, and Lady Olivia all step in to stop her from harming the poor stall owner. Sylphie feels very sad for being on the bad side again, so she bows her head in shame and walks to do her thing. Once she's gone, Artie and Irina discuss the weird tree in front of them. Olivia tells them about an ancient holy sword of royalty hidden inside the tree and then announces that she'll be participating in the Sword King tournament alongside Artie. On hearing that he'll be joining her in the tournament of the Sword King, Artie tries to disqualify himself from joining the fight. Olivia, however, threatens to do something he'll hate if he doesn't join the fight. Artie sighs and reluctantly joins the fight. After he meets with Olivia and Irina, Artie returns to the classroom and finds Sylphie beating up a peeping Tom. Artie intervenes and stops the fight before things go out of hand. When the hubbub is settled, Artie checks out his female classmates who are all fully dressed in their maid costume. The maids all offer themselves to Artie for tasting, leaving him fully embarrassed. Thankfully, Irina arrives from her patrol and stops the ladies from harassing her man friend. The ladies all turn to Irina and indulge her to put on her maid uniform. She puts it on and tries to claim Artie all to herself. However, the ladies all protest this and begin to fight over Artie. Artie, however, just sits there and watches the girls argue. Amidst the arguing, someone announces some useful information on the intercom around the school. So the winner of the 100th anniversary sword fight would be granted a replica of the holy sword of the creator Vald Galvulus. On hearing this information, Irina turns to Artie and confirms if he'll be joining the fight or not. When he says yes, Ginny immediately considers entering. Irina counters her and begins another argument with her. The following day, everyone, student and commoner alike, gather around the arena stage to witness the first match of the sword fight between Irina and her opponent. The match lasts only minutes and Irina comes off victorious. When it's Artie's turn to fight, his enemy forfeits the match after seeing his strength. Some hours pass by and it's Ginny's turn to fight. Her opponent overpowers her in the first half of the fight. However, Artie gets up from his seat and encourages her to fight. Ginny musters up enough courage and takes down her enemy almost instantly. Irina gets hailed by one of the maid girls to come help them do something. After the fight, Ginny invites Artie to come to the Mr. and Miss Beauty contest. Artie, who's on patrol duty, follows her to the shed and finds a rather surprising person there. He peers into the crowd gathered there and finds Elraldo, who's now a fatso. Surprised, Artie walks over to Elraldo and asks him how he's been doing so far. At that time, Ginny was taking the stage to present herself to the crowd. Elraldo tells him about his story with Ginny. Apparently, Ginny's family was his family's from the onset, and with his father being the condescending person he is, Elraldo has always been forced to be rude to people as a way to exact his power on them. The condescending attitude then grew on him and turned him into the bully he was. Now that he's received some ass-whooping from Artie, he's changed his ways and has learned to respect people, including Ginny, once more. After his story, Elraldo leaves for his dorm. After the presentations, Artie and Ginny won the title of the most attractive people there. Artie boosts Ginny's confidence in herself and returns to the class where they all join the other customers to eat. On getting back to their classroom, Irina finds the trophy and gets jealous of Ginny and Artie. Up next, Artie gets to fight his homeroom teacher, Olivia. Olivia refuses to hold back and fights her student with all her strength. Artie lets her get under his skin and uses a forbidden spell to yeet Olivia several hundred feet into the air and away from the arena. This means Olivia forfeits the match and Artie is disqualified, so nobody wins. Irina and Ginny go next. As expected, the duo argues about the winner getting Artie, and Ginny ends up losing. After the fight, they all get back to their dorm with the servants still watching from the shadows. In the next scene, the first-year students prepare themselves for their stage play. After everyone's dressed up, Irina gets super nervous. Being the hero he is, Artie steps in and calms his subordinate down. Irina eventually gets over her nervousness and goes on stage. Everyone has a good time as Artie, his ladies, and a few other actors replay his past life. Artie, however, seems to be having a not-so-great time as he feels very embarrassed replaying one of his battles. As everybody cheers for the performance, Artie recalls the moments before his actual battle with his arch-enemy, Avia Desert Veers. On that day, Artie Varvatos had gathered in front of the enemy base ready to attack. Avia, however, shows up proud in his armor and mocks his army, telling them to enjoy their last nights on Earth before they're slaughtered the next day. Varvatos and his army keep mute and find a place to camp before the next day. That night in the flashback, Sylphie walks over to Varvatos dejected and depressed over her incessant failures. According to her, she's just trying to help her big sis. Varvatos pities her and gives her the chance to do what she wants on the battlefield. He's going to take responsibility. The battle ensues the following day, but it only lasts seconds as Avia and his men all fall into the trap Sylphie laid on the battlefield the night before. Avia and his men are slaughtered in a few seconds and Varvatos is victorious. The only issue there now is that Sylphie randomly placed the traps all over the battlefield. With no idea where each trap is, she injures her own men. This annoys Varvatos and he punishes her for it. By evening time, Sylphie cries to her elder sister for being punished that badly even after winning the war. As they walk back home, Lydia steps in and bails her sister out of Varvatos' punishment. The flashback ends there and Artie's team finishes the play leaving smiles on their audience's faces. As they wave their audience farewell, Artie and his people all notice that Sylphie is gone. They check the audience and find her running after someone similar to Lydia. Unfortunately, that was just a random person. After the whole thing, Ginny and Artie both wait for Sylphie to show up so they can go out. When it seems she's taking too long, Ginny teases Artie and tells him she could be planning a confession to Artie. At that instant, Sylphie approaches them calmly and promises to win her next match. Lo and behold, it's the next match and Sylphie is to face Irina. The match lasts just 2 seconds as Sylphie teleports herself to Irina's back and knocks her out to win the game. Artie notices something odd about Sylphie's behavior, but doesn't say anything. That night, Artie finds Sylphie with Evolved Galgulus standing near a tree he and Irina were admiring earlier. He tries to figure out what she's thinking, but Sylphie already had her mind set on destroying him. She looks up and releases the power of the sword. Artie senses that he's in danger. Still, he tries to bring Sylphie back to her senses. Nonetheless, Sylphie summons her own holy sword and begins to fight Artie. Artie refuses to harm her as he can see her eyes have a different color. The pesky servant who's always watching them laughs out loud as he waits for the unexpected to happen. It's then revealed that the dude had found Sylphie earlier that day and shown her the truth about Varvatos and his sister. Making use of her understandable rage, the servant takes control of her mind and commands her to attack Artie. Artie takes a hit from Sylphie and goes down. Sylphie almost breaks out of the mind control, but the spell is just too strong. Before she finishes, Artie, Irina, and Ginny, who's been overhearing them all this time, join the fight to stop her. At that time, Artie transforms into his former self and attacks Sylphie, who is still under the mind control spell. Sylphie raises her sword to deal a finishing blow to Artie. However, her sister reaches out to her from Artie's body and tells her to stop. The servant walks out of his hole, picks up the sword, and rushes at Artie. Artie cuts one of his hands and sends him packing with one hand intact. The servant, who was holding Sylphie's holy sword, gets electrocuted as he's not chosen. He drops the sword and Artie uses it to finish him off. After taking care of the intruder, Lydia's apparition comes out of Artie's body and comforts her sad sister. Some days after the sword tournament, Artie's class goes on a field trip. While in transit, Artie spectates Irina and Ginny play a game of cards. As usual, Irina wins the game and Ginny loses. Ginny takes her loss out on the poor card in his hands. Meanwhile, Artie picks up the cards and stares at them for a while, wondering why his people's bodily features are so exaggerated there. As the trio have fun, something out of the ordinary happens. Time stops and Artie, alongside his two sidekicks, Irina and Ginny, are transported to another dimension. There they meet someone who calls himself the Creator. Artie keeps his cool and demands an explanation. The Creator tells them he summoned them to his plane to help him with something. He then explains the concept of time in the past, present, and the future. And although the past is supposed to be the past, there's someone, a being, who wishes to change what happened 3,000 years ago. If he's successful, then he'll tear the thin fabric of space and time, which could cause a butterfly effect that could ruin the entire world. So Artie and his ladies are to go back in time and eliminate that being before he's successful. When the Creator is done talking, he transports Artie and his girls to the demon world 3,000 years ago. When they land in this ancient world, they find 2 moons in the sky. Artie tells them they're in the era where his past self was king supreme over all land. To eliminate that being, like the creator said, they have to request a meeting with his past self and discuss some things. Irina and Ginny immediately flock around their master. Just then, they hear someone screaming and walk over to find a lady running from a giant scorpion monster. Artie crushes the scorpion in one blow and saves the lady. A few minutes later, Olivia of the era shows up and commends them for helping her maid out. Artie and the others speak differently and make Olivia suspicious of them. She tries to put them to sleep, but Artie remains. Following that, she takes them to town. Irina and Ginny are shocked to see their town so ancient. Olivia joins them inside a room and tells Artie his history. She recognizes Artie's magical strength and tries to pull him to her side. Artie joins them on 2 conditions. 1, Irina and Artie join them as well, and 2, they have to be enlisted as part of Lady Verda's forces. Olivia is shocked in his second condition, but she succumbs to it. After explaining a few more things to them, she takes them to Verda's lair. On getting there, Artie and the girls wait silently for the crazy scientist Verda to show up. Seconds later, Verda blows up her own house and presents herself to the girls as Verda, the mad scientist. The ladies bring out their playing cards from their era and are surprised to see a different Verda there. Verda reconstructs her house with magic and invites her visitors in. Artie tells her the truth about where they came from, and Verda bursts out in excitement. She happily takes them all in. Stealthy breaks down the door moments later and fights Verda. Soon, Lydia arrives. Contrary to what the girls expect, Lydia acts like a total asshole and bullies Verda. Oh, and it turns out that she likes women too. After bullying Verda to her taste, she sees Ginny's big chest and tries to woo her into a nightstand. When Lydia finds out Ginny's a virgin, she pulls her close and begins to caress her backside. Artie's had enough, so he saves Ginny from the harassment and annoys Lydia. Lydia challenges him to duel to settle their beef, and Artie accepts. He takes off his robe and faces Lydia outside Verda's house to a 1-versus-1 combat. When the fight begins, Lydia beats the living hell out of Artie. However, Artie muscles up and keeps fighting her until they're both tired. By evening time, Lydia confesses to needing Artie's power. Artie turns back and asks if she could help them get an audience with the Demon Lord. Lydia, however, tells him they have to gain Varvatos' trust before he can agree to see them. By nightfall, Artie stands by a balcony to think while Lydia harasses Ginny in the bathhouse. While having his alone time, Latima, one of the maids of the villa, shows up and introduces herself to Artie. She asks him to make himself at home, as it was Lydia's orders to treat them like royalty. Artie concurs with her thoughts and overhears Lydia harassing Ginny just when he's about to think highly of her. After freshening up, Artie and his ladies join Lydia and the rest of Varvatos' army at their base as they prepare for the war against the land of Aurelia. He tells the ladies a little backstory about the previous battles Lydia and Verda had led in the past, all being successes. The battle of the century begins in a few hours with Irina and Ginny helping to deliver supplies. While at it, another faction of the enemy squad attacks them. Their enemy had deceived Lydia and Verda by making them fight a larger part of their squad up front, while their commander, Boldian, and his squad sneak behind them and destroy their supply camp. When Lydia hears news of this, she quickly stops her men from attacking and rushes back to their supply camp to help them. In the meantime, Artie takes up the reins in the supply camp and attacks the commander head-on. Within seconds, he takes down Bolgan and saves the camp. Lydia and Sylphie arrive moments later and are shocked to find the great commander lying on the ground defeated. Lydia is very proud of Artie and his girls and promises to reward them by setting up a meeting with Varvatos. The very next day, Lydia fulfills her promise as she takes Artie and the ladies to the almighty castle of the demon lord Varvatos. Upon arriving at the castle, Artie and the girls are attacked by the sinister servant of the king, Sir Alvardo. Artie recognizes him off the bat and greets him. Lydia condemns him for attacking their guests, but the real demon lord Varvatos approaches them today. Ginny and Irina faint at the mere sight of the charming demon lord. Even Artie gets jealous of his past handsome self. He, however, keeps his secret to himself and wonders how things were for him back then. Varvatos leads Artie and the girls to the throne room to listen to whatever they have to say. Irina and Ginny begin spouting some nonsense from their era. They get the shock of their life when Varvatos refuses to answer the name Demon Lord. Artie notices this and wonders why his former still doesn't recognize himself as the Demon Lord. Is there an imposter? Artie's suspicions are confirmed when Varvatos reveals the existence of someone claiming to be the Demon Lord. After their meeting with the king, Artie and his girls get back to Verda's villa. After hearing the matter on the ground, Verda explains to them that the one claiming to be the Demon Lord could be a person who's trying to alter history, the person the creator warned them about. Artie recalls their meeting with the creator and it clicks. Moving forward, Verda explains to them that they tried to negotiate with him as he was busy destroying the outer worlds. However, the Demon Lord imposter never wanted to come to deal with them. Irina suggests they try to explain the threat to the Demon King. However, Artie fears that he may not trust them well enough to believe them. Lydia shows up at that instant and invites Artie to battle. Artie immediately accepts her battle request and follows her and the army to their next battle. On their way there, Artie finds out that their next opponent is the Cursed King and Archman Meveles. This sends shivers down Artie's spine as he remembers the horrid battles he fought with the Accursed King. In the next scene, their army faces an army of skeletons. Artie crushes them in a single blow and urges his team to keep moving. They all move into Melivis' kingdom and find the entire place in flames. Artie and his team get very alert as they inch closer to the burning area. Just then, Melivis' head flies out of a door. The imposter Demon King shows up afterwards and introduces himself to Artie. Once he's done talking, he takes his leave. After their encounter with the imposter, Lydia and Artie, alongside his team, get back to their land and host a meeting to discuss the imposter. When all their generals are present, a meeting begins. After much discussion, Varvatos declares war on the imposter and instructs his generals to prepare an all-out attack on the imposter and defeat in one day. While Alvardo laughs, one of the generals voices his concern about using all the men at their disposal, as doing this would leave most of their kingdom defenseless. Varvatos calms them down and lets them know that he has a plan in place. Artie also reminds him that the imposter proclaims himself as immortal. Varvatos tells him he's got a plan for that. After the meeting, Artie gets back to his room. He sees Latima for a bit to discuss a few things and then returns inside to reflect on the things he's seen since he came back. While he's in his thoughts, the Demon Lord imposter shows his face. He lets Artie know that he's Artie Meteor from another dimension and was sent back in time to this era to correct a mistake he made in his own time. Nothing ever worked out for the imposter in his world. When asked what his plans are in this world, the imposter tells Artie that he's there to save Lydia. He feels guilty for allowing his foolishness to get the best of him when he kills Lydia. So by traveling back in time, he wishes to defeat his former self so the incident with Lydia never happens. Artie still can't get the logic behind his thoughts. Why is he fighting the current Varvatos if he's trying to save Lydia? The imposter tells him the self-proclaimed creator had ordered him to destroy the world to save Lydia. Now, I'm not sure how that logic fits the context, but then again, it's Enheim. After hearing all he has to say, Artie tells him a little bit about his own battle with Lydia. This frustrates the imposter a bit, and he asks him to join his team. Since they both plan on saving Lydia, working together would only bring them towards their goal. Artie pulls out his hand to join forces with the imposter. However, he hears a voice in his head which orders him to stop, so he pulls back. The imposter gives him time to think about it and leaves the room. Artie takes a walk with Latima and asks her what she would do if she were in his situation. Latima tells him she'll pick the lovely and courageous Lydia over anybody else. Artie thanks her for the advice and joins the others at the lunch table. Lydia notices the sullen look on Artie's face, so she decides to suspend lunch and take him out to enjoy himself. Artie enjoys a heartfelt lunch outside and watches Lydia try to get women to sleep with her. When he's fed up with her nonsense, he insults and punches her. After a few punches, Lydia finally asks Artie what's bothering him. Artie refuses to tell him anything, so she decides to show him something. Lydia takes Artie to a haunted ruin. As soon as they get there, ghosts begin to appear from the ground and surround Lydia. She tells Artie that she helped in the elimination of the innocent demons in the area just so they could pave the way to the king's castle. She's no saint and doesn't try to hide it. If Artie wants to give her a painful death, she'll gladly accept it. After their meeting, Lydia gets back home to meet the worried Irina and Ginny. She gives them some jewelry for worrying about her and plumps up their faces. Artie also shows up to continue their night in peace. The following day, Verda and her forces fight a horde of monsters in the wastelands. Everyone showcases their magical prowess and takes down every monster present on the battlefield. By nightfall, the imposter meets with Artie to hear his answer to their discussion. Artie refuses to join forces and gets the imposter pissed. He immediately gets into his battle stance to fight Artie. After the first few minutes of fighting, the imposter appreciates his strength and prepares himself for a showdown. Back in the castle, Irina and Ginny complain about being left out of the important fights. While Irina despairs over their situation, Ginny tells her not to give up fighting for their lord Artie. Irina suddenly gets invigorated and chuckles at her annoying friend Ginny. Just then, Latima arrives to inform them about Artie's important announcement. Apparently, Artie had asked Latima to take the two girls to the imposter's castle so they could destroy what was making him immortal. Latima explains to them that the imposter made himself immortal by separating his soul from his body and sealing it in a crystal below his castle. This way, only his body would be gone if death happened. They're to secretly infiltrate the castle and destroy the vessel along with the soul and render the imposter mortal and terminable. After hearing how dangerous the mission would be, Irina becomes very fearful, but Ginny cheers her up. While they jump and mope, some enemies attack them from the shadows. Latima protects the girls and urges them to go on. The battle on the front lines continues with Varvatos' army pummeling down all monsters that come their way. On getting to the castle, Ginny and Irina fall into Latima's trap. Turns out Latima had been working with the enemy undercover. Artie watches from an orb as his two girls get tied up to a cross. The imposter lets him know that he has no ill intentions about the girls. He turns to his alter ego, Artie, and still tries to make him understand why he should protect Lydia at all costs. He also explains to Artie to defeat him or else his army will lay siege to Varvatos' castle. Irina and Ginny ask Latima why she would turn against them. Latima tells them they're just tools to manipulate Artie. Expecting them to fret, Ginny talks big and promises to get out of their chains in due time. Latima watches the two girls work together to free themselves from their chains. Latima summons some demons to attack Ginny and Irina, but luckily for the two, Lydia arrives in time to stop the demons and Latima. Latima tells her about the imposter's plan to ruin the world just to save her. Lydia refuses to be saved that way, so she destroys the demons that attack her. She lets the girls know that she's ready to accept the fate that befalls her and would never seek help for something she's already accepted. After finishing off the demons, she proclaims to live and die like the champion she is. She raises her sword and slashes the crystal to pieces. After getting his heart destroyed, Artie tries to speak some sense into the imposter. He urges the imposter to forgive himself for his mistakes. However, the imposter refuses to do so. He activates his second phase alongside Artie and begins a serious fight with Artie. During the fight, the imposter recalls his few personal moments with Lydia in his dimension. He fought with Lydia the last time he saw her. Now that he has a chance to change the past, he isn't going to allow Artie to stop him. Artie, after hearing his alter ego's thoughts, decides to end him. He puts the imposter down and runs his sword through him. The imposter dies in a matter of seconds, and almost immediately, Artie and the two ladies all begin transcending back to their time. Before they go, Lydia asks them about the future. Irina and Jenny tell her that the future is bright and full of life. She didn't lose her life for nothing. Lydia hugs them and sends a final message to Artie before they're gone. At that moment, Varvatos receives word of their victory over the Demon Lord. Varvatos makes it known to his men, and they all shout the cry of victory. Lydia also shows up and tells Varvatos all he needs to know about Artie. Before getting back to his time, Artie appears in the white dimension and meets with the creator, who thanks him greatly for his help. Before leaving, the creator lets him know that they're on his side. Just then, Artie and the two ladies wake up at their destination. They get out of the vehicle and get to enjoy their time together. The ladies relay Lydia's last message to Artie and put a smile on his face. In the final scene of this series, Artie gets to say his goodbyes to Lydia's apparition.